Hope you can see my screen. Okay. So this is quite, it covers a lot of things. It covers the lookup, index and match, and XLOOKUP that we've done previously, and some if functions. And the main question is, you need to like analyze the data that you have been given. So you have a list of employees with their IDs and the leave days they've taken. You have their employment type on another tab, and you have annual leave taken on another tab. Did any of us try this? Or can you let me know if you tried it and if you encountered like any problems with it before I start?
I did try it. Though I encountered some problems and I tried to fix it. But the one
Okay.
that was a big challenge for me was the XLOOKUP.
Was the XLOOKUP?
Yes, I struggled with it, but I ended up using VLOOKUP at the.
So you were able to do VLOOKUP?
Yes, I did VLOOKUP.
Okay. Do you have XLOOKUP on your Excel?
Yes, I do.
You do have a function. Okay. Okay. So yeah, we'll go through that. Any other person? Did anyone attempt it? At this point, this is the point where I ask people to share what they've done, but it doesn't look like a lot of people attempted it. So we'll just go through it as per normal. And we'll start with the index and match. So the first thing is use index and match to bring in employee IDs from the employee ID tab. So we have the name of employee, and we need to bring in the employee ID from the employee ID tab. Before I start, this is what you encounter in the workplace, and for interviews, this is how the questions will be set out. You are needed to consolidate the data. So you are implementing a new system, and you're getting data from different systems, and you need to consolidate this data first before you can load to the new system. So consolidate and clean up the data before you can load into the new system. And the reason why you're getting a new system is for efficiency, right? Because you have all this information sitting in different systems. So you have input from different systems, and you're trying to like consolidate it and make it fit your new system. And after the consolidation, the HR director wants to know how many employees have taken too many annual leave, because they've not been able to do that because of the different systems. And also your finance director wants to know the number of annual leaves that are not taken, so that they can put in an accrual at year end. So these are like real life things that you'll be asked to do at work as a data analyst, business analyst. So you need to be able to like, do this kind of things. So the first thing is you're going to use a pivot for your finance director. Well, so we're going to create pivots. On the first one, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to copy the name of the employees from employee ID tab. So I'm just going to copy that all the way down. So if we have the name of employees here, and the first thing we need to use is index and match to bring in employee IDs from the employee ID tab. Of course, when you ask to do this, they're not going to specify what you need to use. This is just to test your knowledge of the different elements that we've done. Employee ID. Who is going to help us with index and match? Adolisa, can I put you on the spot? Okay, employee ID. The first thing we do is we do our match. I'm just going to remind you what we do. So we do our match equal to match. Name of employee is our lookup value, comma. And then our table is on the second tab. And this will be, we'll select our employee, the name of the employee, comma, and we want an exact match, 0. So that's our match. So we've done the match, which is so this Naya is on level 1, like row 1 of that selection. And then we need to add our index to this. So I will do index, open a bracket. No, index, open a bracket. We need our table. So the first thing is we select our table. So I select this. Comma. My match is already there. That's the position I want. And then comma. And my column number is, I'm bringing in the ID, so it's on column 1. And then I close the bracket. No, I'm on. Do you know what is wrong here? I selected, my selection was wrong. My table selection was wrong, which was why it picked the first one on that table. So always ensure that your table selection is right. So this is our employee ID. And that is Naya. And then we need to know if this employee is full-time or part-time. So we're meant to use VLOOKUP to bring in employment type. And if he cannot find that employee on the employment type, it needs to return NA. If you can't find it, instead of returning NA, you need FT, full-time. So it's either the employee is part-time on the employment type. We only have part-time employees here. So if you can't find it here, that means the employee is full-time. And if it's full-time, if you can't find it on that tab, it will return NA. But we don't want NA, we want it to return FT. So we're going to start with our VLOOKUP equal to V lookup, open a bracket. What are we looking up? Before I start, we need to look at this data. So we're looking up the name, and so that this is what we're using for the lookup. So it will be equal to VLOOKUP, look up the name, comma, look it up here, select your data, and what column are we looking up? We're looking up this second column, the second column on the table, which is 2, comma, false. Enter. Of course, Naya is not there and it's returned NA, but we don't want it to return NA. If Naya is not there, that means Naya is full-time. Naya is not part-time. So we need to add if error to this to make sure that we change all the NAs to FT. So I'm going to add an if error to this formula. So if it returns an error, I want you to return FT and then close the bracket. So you're basically saying if it's an error, if you can't find it, return FT. And then the leave entitlement. We need to use an if function to populate this. So all full-time staff are entitled to 25 days annual leave. And all part-time staff are entitled to 12 days annual leave. So we know that our if statement, we need to say if column D is FT is 25. Otherwise, it's 12. So it would be equal to, if this is equal to FT, it will be 25. So if that is true, it will return 25. Otherwise, it's 12. And then close the brackets. So if this, once we drag it down, if this is part-time, it will return 12. And then we need to know the number of annual leave taken. We need to use XLOOKUP to bring this in from annual leave taking tab. So this is our annual leave taking tab, and we have the employee ID and the leave days taken. So we know that what we need to use to match that is the employee ID. So it would be equal to XLOOKUP, open a bracket, our lookup value is our employee ID, comma, we're looking up this table, comma, and what we need to bring in is just the second column here, and then close the brackets. So it's simply XLOOKUP, your lookup value, where you need to look up the lookup value, and then the column you need to bring in. XLOOKUP is, simpler than the VLOOKUP because you don't have to count columns and you don't have to put true or false on the XLOOKUP. And then we have annual leave balance. What is the annual leave balance? You have a leave entitlement of 25 days, you've taken 50 days. So this is just a subtraction. So it will be equal to your leave entitlement minus your leave days taken. And then our anomalous check is if you need to use the if function to check for anomalies. If any employee has taken more leave than they are entitled to, you need to flag it as a check. Otherwise, it's okay. If they've taken more leave than they're entitled to, by the time we subtract the leave days taken from the leave entitlement, we're going to have a negative. So we can use an if function to check for negative on column G. So it would be equal to, if this column G, if it's less than 0, that means they've taken more leave. And then we need to check that. Otherwise, it's okay. Enter. So I've put in all the formula, and all you need to do is now drag it all the way down. But I'm not going to drag it. We're going to have to do it. I need us to do this together. Can we do it together, please? Oh, I mean, if you can let me know which one you're strong with and you can do, so that we can do this together. Everyone is quiet today.
I think we should go over them again, please.
Okay, which one in particular? Which one in particular?
Yes, I got stopped at from the onset, honestly.
Okay. Let's do it again. So we'll do it one more time. Please go back and watch previous videos, because previous videos are more explanatory. And if you don't practice this, you won't get it. So you need to actually practice. So this exercise is meant for us to practice what we've been doing for the past couple of weeks. Index and match. Let's start with match. Although let's start with index, because that will be the way you do it. So it will be index. Sorry, equal to index Open a bracket. Once you open a bracket, it will prompt you on what you need to do next. So we know that in this case, we need to pick our table. We're looking for employee ID on the employee ID tab. So index, this is our table. I'm just going to select that all the way down, comma. And then it's asking me for the row number. The row number, what we use to get the row number is the match function. So I'm going to start my match function. Open a bracket. And once you start your match function, it knows that you're already in your match function. So it's asking you for your lookup value. A lookup value is the name. That's the name, comma. And then where are we looking it up? On this list of names, just to get the row. So I'm going to select that down, comma. And then we want an exact match. It's already giving us the options, less than, exact match, greater than. So we want an exact match. So it will be 0. Close the bracket. That's your match done. And then once we close, once we do that, we know that our match is done. We have already put in our row number, which is a match, and then a column number on the table for our index. Our column number is 1 because we are bringing in the ID. So I'll put in 1 and I'll close the bracket and enter. And then you have the employee ID. VLOOKUP to bring in the full-time and part-time. Employment type as the name and either part-time. So it only has part-time. If this employee is not a part-time staff, it will bring in NA because it won't find it on that tab. And what we need to do is to remove all the NAs. We need to use an if error to change all the NAs to full-time. So if you can't find the staff there, that means that staff is a full-time staff. So we need to return FT. So we start with VLOOKUP. Our lookup value is the name, comma. We look up the name, we select our table, ensuring that our lookup value is on the first column, comma. What we need to bring in is the second column on the table. So we put 2, comma, and we want an exact match, which is false. So we'll put false here and enter. Jonathan Kerr is not on that list. So if it's NA, we want it to return FT. So I'm going to add an if error to this formula. So you add if error to the beginning, open a bracket, and you're saying if it's an error, do this. So if that returns an error, I want FT. That's what I want. And close the brackets and enter. And that staff is a full-time staff. The leave entitlement is on employee ID tab. So I need to look up the name, use the if function. So we're using if function for this. So if the staff is full-time, they're entitled to 25 days. And if it's part-time, they're entitled to 12 days. So you're going to use a simple if function to calculate that. So if this staff no, we're using this. If this is full-time, if this is equal to, why am I not typing if open a bracket, this is equal to FT, that's full-time. If that statement is true, what value do you want it to bring? So if that statement is true, if it's FT, I want you to return 25. But if it's false, that means that staff is part-time, then return 12. Enter. Leave days taken. We need XLOOKUP to look up leave days taken on our AL taken tab. And what we have here that we can use for lookup is the employee ID. So it would be equal to XLOOKUP, open a bracket. Our lookup value is the employee ID. So click on the employee ID. That's our lookup value, comma. The table where we're looking this up is on the annual leave taken. And it's going to be, this is going to be the table, comma. No, we're only selecting where the lookup, the column for the lookup, comma. And then once we put a comma, it will ask us what column to return. So you just need to select the column to return. That's the column to return. Close your bracket and enter. And that's 14 days. So if you look at 1006, here, you will find that it's 14 days annual leave. And then annual leave balance is just the difference between your annual leave taken and your entitlement. So it's simply equal to your leave entitlement minus the days you've taken. That's the balance you have. And then because some people could have taken more annual leave than they're entitled to, we need to check for that. So if for any reason your column G gives you a result of negative, you know that this person has taken more leave days than they are entitled to. So this is meant to check. So it's just a simple if function to say, if column G, if this is less than 0, then it's an anomaly. So we need to check that. Otherwise, flag it as okay and enter. So if G7 is less than, what am I doing wrong? Equal to if this is less than 0, comma, check, comma, okay. Do we have any questions? They're really quiet class today. Adulisa.
Okay, I'm just asking these questions so that I can stick to my point. When we are selecting the arrow, do we select the header, that's the title of the column, or just the values on the column?
So when you do your index and match, you can select it as long as your selection is the same. So like when you do your index and match, the way so this selection does not include the headers, which is on the employee ID.
Okay, because I noticed it when I didn't do index and match. I used the function,
Well, you can select headers. It shouldn't affect what you do. So if I add headers to this, as long as I'm selecting headers on both of them. So if I change this to C2 and change this to D2, as long as you are selecting headers for both of them. So here my selection is from C2 to E1002, which is C2, that's C2. So you can select your headers. The most important thing, like here, if you select header for one, for your index, and you don't select header for your match, then it will be wrong. So as long as it's consistent, then it's fine. You can select headers anywhere. If you do XLOOKUP, you can, this is on annual leave taken. B2, if I select my headers here, it doesn't matter. It's fine. Just make sure that your selection is the same, is consistent. You're not selecting either on one part of the formula and not selecting either on the other part. So it doesn't affect what you do. Just keep it consistent if it's within the same formula.
Okay, thank you.
So I've selected header here. It doesn't change the value because it's not looking up the header. And once this is done, remember we need to freeze our selection so that when we drag it down, it doesn't move. And how do we do that? We put a dollar. We put a dollar in front of our selection. I've used the function F4. So we need to always freeze. Just remember to freeze it, especially when you're dragging your formula down. Otherwise, your table will move. And we don't want the table to move. So I'm just going to freeze that. This has no table. This has a table selection. I'm going to freeze that because I don't want it to move when I drag it down, because if the table is not going to move, it's still going to be the same. That has no table, and this is just an if function. So I'm going to drag this all the way down. And then I've populated my table. And if you look at this, you see that you have some part-time here. If you check this and there's no part-time, then you know that there is an error. And you need to always spot check your data just to make sure it's picking the right thing. Always spot check, because sometimes the formula might be wrong and you wouldn't know if you don't spot check. How do Lisa?
At what point do we freeze the cell? Is it when we are dragging to the right?
If you want to, if you're going to drag that formula and you don't want your selection to change, freeze the cell before you drag.
That is to the right.
If you are dragging to the right, anywhere you're dragging it to, freeze what you need to freeze.
Okay, because I noticed you freezed only the tables.
Yeah, I froze only the tables because that is the only thing. Well, I didn't freeze this. So I did not freeze this B because I was not dragging to the right. If I'm dragging to the right or to the left and you don't want that column to change, you need to freeze your B. Whether you freeze it now or you don't freeze it, it's fine because I'm not dragging to the side. So you have to know what you're doing, where you're dragging that formula to. To be on the safe side, always just freeze it. Just freeze it, because now I'm not dragging to the side, but I might decide to do something else later that will need to drag it to the side. So it's just always better to just freeze it. And for this one, because we use if error to change the NA, so if there's an error, you won't know. But if there's an error, you realize that everything will just be FT because you've used if error to change any error to FT. So if you look at your filter and you can't find any PT here, then you know that probably your formula was wrong. So always ensure that you check and make sure it's picking the right thing. And also, we know that anomalies check is for anything below 0 here. So if we select the ones below 0, I would expect that this will be checked. So this looks fine. So I'll clear the filter. So we populated the table, we consolidated the data. The next question is, after consolidating the data, HR director wants to know how many employees have taken too many annual leave and how many are within their allowance. So we need to use a pivot for this. And how do we insert a pivot? You select your data. Make sure you select everything. No. Select everything. Go to insert. We need a pivot table. We want it on a new worksheet. So, okay, new worksheet. And what do we need to know? We need to know employees who have taken too many annual leave and the number of employees who have taken too many annual leaves, and the number of employees who are within their allowance. So we're just really counting here. And what do we need to use? What would we use to count? It would be our anomalies check. So we know that if it's a check, they've taken too many annual leaves. If it's okay, then they are within their allowance. So I can use any of these fields to count. So if I use the name of employee to count, for instance, once you put name of employees under values, it can only count. It can't add or do any other thing apart from count. So I know that 71 employees have taken too many days, and 929 employees are within their allowance. That's simply what you need to do. And then your finance director wants to know the number of annual leave days that have not been taken, so they can put in an accrual at year end. And she wants this by employment type. Remember that once we insert a pivot table, we can always copy and paste that. So I'm going to do it twice. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it here. And it's still the same pivot. I'm just going to choose different options. In this case, we want to group by full-time or part-time first. So I'm just going to take off the anomalies check. I'm going to put full or part-time here. And what I want is the leave balance. So I would take off the name of employee. What I want is I want people who still have balances left. So I can take my anomalies check. I can use that as a filter. And the people who are okay, those are the ones I need. So that's okay. So those are the people who have balances left. And annual leave balance left, if I put it here, that is the sum of annual leave balances left. So for full-time staff, they have 14,942 days left, and part-time staff have 110 days left. And that is all that question asks you to do. Just a pivot. And just put whatever you need on the pivot, depending on what you're trying to do or what you're trying to group together. Is this clear?
Yeah,
Can we confidently do a pivot now, Adelisa?
Not yet, please.
You just said do whatever you want to do. Sorry. I'm trying to understand what you meant by that, please.
As in, do whatever the question asks you to do. As in, pick the options, pick the filters. Your filters based on what you're trying to achieve. So
Okay.
the pivot is very flexible. You can pick different options once you have your pivot table field. So it depends on where you want to get to, or you want to analyze the data. So like in this case, we just need full-time, part-time, and the annual leave balance is left. It might be that maybe you need, maybe your filter is, okay, some people have not even taken any of their annual leave. What is happening? Maybe you need to send an email to them to find out why they have not taken their annual leave. So the options you pick will be different.
Okay.
So whatever you need to do, the pivot table is very flexible. You can use it and group it anyhow you like. The main thing that the pivot is doing is just grouping. It's just grouping your data. So you can cut and group it however you like. Can we please practice this? So what I will encourage you to do is, if you know this, the functions that we've done, like if you know your lookup, if you know your if you know your pivot table, know your pivot table, know your lookups, know your ifs. If you know those three things, there's no data you can't analyze. And you'll be able to analyze it quickly, like without wasting time. So it is really, really important for you to, as data people, you need to know your pivots, you need to know your lookups, and you need to know the ifs. You don't even need the difficult ifs, just the simple ones. Adolisa, do you want to say something?
Yeah, just curious to ask how many, what's the time, the duration they will give you in an interview when you're giving a work like that?
For like this question.
Yes.
So they'll probably give you like 1 hour, but it will be part of the question. This will not be the whole thing. You'll probably now be asked to like write a report on what you found out. So it will be like maybe after you've done this, then write a report to your HR director, where you have to like analyze your results, what the trend that you're seeing, and what can be causing this or what can be the consequence of it. So when you have like an interview, doing your data should be the easiest thing there. So you should be able to like put your data together quickly so that you can now, answer, do your reports, and do the main things you're meant to do. But if you struggle with putting the data together, one, if your data is, if you have put your data together and it's wrong, then your reports will be wrong anyway. So if you practice this, then you won't struggle with putting the data together, and then you can concentrate on, on your reports or on the analysis of the data.
Okay, I understand that aspect because I'm trying to know what the report should look like. Is there like a template? Is there any particular thing they want to know, or just
It might even be like they might even say write an email. So it might be, send an email to the director, letting them know what you notice on the data, what they can do to rectify this, what could be wrong.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be, even if it's a report, your report can just be like, you have a header, analysis of blah, blah, so this is what you notice. So it's not like a standard format for, as long as you're able to communicate what you noticed. So it can even be in bullet points.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
They might say write an email, and it will just be what you've noticed. This is what you've done. This number of people have taken, you notice that this number of people have taken their too many annual leave days, and this should not, normally it shouldn't happen. And you can even bring it to their attention that maybe the data is wrong, the source of the data is wrong, that they might need to like check and make sure that everything is, is not duplicating. So it's just things that you'll be able to, look at the data and say how many, like for instance, if 71 people, employees have taken too many annual leave, this is an anomaly. It shouldn't happen normally. So you might actually question this. You can actually question, one of the things you can write in your report is question the source of this data. That it might be duplicated. So they need to like actually check to make sure that it is not duplicated, because it shouldn't happen. So is anyone raising their hands? I can't really see the people raising their hands. So if you're raising your hands, please, you can talk.
I don't know, but this reports writing in analyzing data.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's something that, because the way you're saying it, I'm still really lost when it gets to this report writing.
So report writing, maybe the way I said it, because report writing is, if you're writing a memo, I think it used to be memo a long time ago, before emails, before emails became prevalent. So let's assume, okay, you're writing an email. Most of the time it will be an email. So write an email, you got a query from your HR director on this data, you've analyzed the data, reply the HR director on what you've noticed on the data. So it will now be what you have noticed on the data, what they can do, what the trend you are seeing. But a lot of the time, this will not be it won't just be checking your Excel skills, because you need the Excel skills to put the data together, to understand the data. And then by the time you put it together, the data, that data should now turn to information. It should inform you. Is that clear? So anyone still?
Yes, my
Adeliza, did you just
hand
raise your
up,
hand?
yes, because this report thing, I just need to be clear of what we should have in the reports. Normally, I know that you might be communicating to people who do not understand the data. So in simple words, you need to explain to them what is in the data you've analyzed already. But then, is it in all cases that you are expected to give a suggestion?
No, it's not in all cases.
If
But
they
if you give a
ask you,
suggestion, it would be better, obviously, if you give a suggestion. If you notice something in the data, it might be better.
okay, so in an interview, I'm giving this work now. I already know that 71 employees is quite a number to have people that have taken much more than what they're supposed to. In an interview, I should go out of my way to give the suggestion.
Yeah, I would, in an interview, I would say that the data needs to be checked, because it's kind of an anomaly that you have 71 staff who have taken too many annual leave days in a standard organization. So I would suggest that probably that data might be corrupt, or maybe there's a duplicate in the data. So I would suggest a check on that data. Because this is, you should throw, once you consolidate it, it will throw questions at you. You look at it and see, okay, you would have questions.
Okay.
So it's just like thinking outside the box. What is this data telling me? You know, data is just a set of numbers until you actually turn it into like information. So the data should tell you something. And if it tells you something, you're better off, you know, on your report, you might not like give it might not be like, I think this is what is going on. Your suggestion might be in form of a question that, you know, it might be that the source of information needs to be checked, or maybe talk to employees or something, or managers, to see if they keep local records that you can use to like verify this information from the system.
Okay.
So it's just thinking of, you know, what that information, just thinking about what that information is telling you.
All right. So the report is just the same thing as storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
You're just telling the story about the data.
All right. Thank you.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I just also want to add that it may not necessarily have to be you as an analyst. You may not necessarily have to be biased. It could come as a form of suggestion or recommendation, basically, you know, and an advice too, so that they're not seeing you as somebody who is close looped in a way. You know, if you're saying something like you had suggested that, oh, you think the data that there has been an excess of leave taken by the employees, you could as well just say the implications of that excess leave, maybe the cost implication too, if it's possible. It really depends on what the kind of data you have and what it's staring at you, what the data is saying to you at that time. That will form the basis of what story you bring out of it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. Because if employees have taken too many annual leave days, that is a cost to the company. But you might not even, you might not even have enough information to make that assessment. It's just to like
situation
point it out so that they
Mm.
know that you notice that something is not
is
quite right.
wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just to point it out. You can just point their attention to something. So you might not necessarily even say, oh, this is what has happened. You don't know what has happened. You just have the
Yeah.
data. But it's just to point their attention to like particular things that you noticed. Okay. This will be at the end of Excel. I hope it's been useful. Please go back and just
Right.
practice. I think that's the main thing. If you don't use it, you forget it. I mean, there are so many formulas that I used to know. If I don't use it, I'll forget it and I have to go back to learn it again. So please practice and practice.
Kemi, can I quickly ask, is there any platform where we can get suggestions of these interview questions on them and practice with it? Just being curious.
Well, if you Google actually can help. Like if you put it on Google, then you will get suggestions. Just put Excel-based interview questions.
No, it might just give me the words and not give me a data to work with. Will it also give me a data?
Sometimes it can give you data. It depends. So
You
just
use
check and
AI
see what you
to
can get.
get data possibly.
Okay, all right.
Use
And even on
ChatGPT or
Google, you can get practice
Copilot.
data
Yeah.
for different Excel.
Mm.
You can get practice data.
All right, thank you so much.
The report is kind of like report. It depends on what they're asking you. It's not like a one size fits all. So it will just be examples, really. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I think this is
Thank
where
you,
we'll end
Kemi.
it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you.